My girlfriend posted a beach picture to her Instagram. So I'm breaking up with her. I asked my current girlfriend, or maybe ex-girlfriend, to be in a relationship with me during the pandemic. She gratefully accepted, which is no surprise because I am incredibly handsome and fit. I never have had any problems in the dating market. One thing is that my girlfriend always would wear baggy clothes on Zoom and would generally cover up her body. I asked her why she would do that, and she said it just made her feel comfortable. This raised some suspicion in me, and eventually she came out and told me that she was quite chubby. Now I usually don't go for fat girls, especially whales that are over 200 pounds, but I really like my girlfriend's personality. So instead of breaking up with her, I helped her with her diet and training. I got her onto a lot more healthy habits, and this became the main point of most of our conversations. Finally, after around a year of online dating, the lockdown was lifted. We decided to meet up with each other. We decided that for our first day we would do a gym date. I was the one that suggested the idea because of how often girls check me out in the gym, and I wanted to show off. But for some reason the tables were turned, all the guys were flirting with her and were all looking at her. I mean, to be honest, even I was surprised when I first saw her. She looked so much better person. But one thing that caught my attention is that she would respond to the guys that were flirting with her. She even started a conversation with one of them. I was a bit shocked by this because I was the one that got her into this stuff, and as soon as she got a hot body, she was just flirting with everyone. I was pretty annoyed at what was happening, and even worse was that my workout felt terrible because I had to constantly be checking on my girlfriend to make sure I could protect her from talking to other guys. I just grabbed her hand and told her that we were leaving. She said that she still had a couple of sets left, but I made an excuse for us to go. We ended up going to Chipotle, and eventually, things calmed down. I was still a bit mad at her behavior in the gym when she talked to other guys, but I decided to let it slide this time. We went on a couple more dates out to restaurants, and I honestly started falling in love more with her in person, but that's not to say there still weren't incidents where I had to step in. One time, we were supposed to meet at the place where I parked my car, and on the way I saw her talking to a random guy. I had to intervene. She told me that it was just a high school friend that was complimenting her on her body transformation because she had lost a lot of weight since high school. After that incident, I made it clear to her that I didn't want to see her talking to other guys at all. She told me I was being jealous and overprotective, and that my mentality was really toxic and outdated. I told her she was being ridiculous. This ended up causing our first fight in the whole relationship, and we just decided to go no contact with each other until one of us admitted the other was wrong. We went 3 days without talking, and I 100% wasn't going to cave in. I knew that she was flirting with other guys and that I was right. That day though, our mutual friend that introduced us invited both of us to a nearby beach to celebrate his 25th birthday. I wasn't sure how to tell him that me and my girlfriend weren't speaking with each other, so instead I just texted her saying that we should at least act normal for our friend's party, and she agreed that our relationship shouldn't come between our friends. When we got to the beach, I could immediately feel tension between us, and definitely not the romantic type. But I couldn't believe what she was going to do next. I wish I could take back the time and choose to have never helped her in the first place after what she did. We all went to the changing rooms, and when everyone came out, my girlfriend was wearing a two-piece bathing suit. It was more than revealing for her. I mean, she was basically wearing a thong. I tried not to think about it too much, but I saw how all the guys were looking at her and it made me super angry and uncomfortable. It's so clear that she did it on purpose just to get their attention, and it definitely worked because after the group photo, my girlfriend asked if one of the guys could take a solo photo of her. Obviously she was just trying to be promiscuous again, but what really broke me was how she was posing in the photo. She decided for some reason that this would be the perfect time to show off her SS and small waist. I wasn't planning on confronting her at the party, but a couple minutes later when I saw those photos uploaded on her Instagram I couldn't hold back and all HLL broke loose. In front of all of our friends, I started screaming at her about how just because we weren't talking now didn't mean she gets to act like a hoe. She was obviously embarrassed by my remark, and she told me after she saw her old high school guy friend she was inspired to show all of her old classmates her body progress, and that she was ashamed of the fact that I couldn't just be proud for her. I told her that I was planning on proposing to her, and that one day if she wanted to be a mother then this thought behavior had to stop. Our friend group started getting involved when my girlfriend left crying, and all my friends are calling me an a-hole for what I did. Later that day, I told my girlfriend that she could either take the post down or we were over. I was shocked at her response. What are some cool psychological facts? The Ben Franklin effect. It means that someone who did you a favor is more likely to do you another favor. This term is associated with the cognitive dissonance theory, which says that people change their attitudes or behavior to resolve tensions, or dissonance, between their thoughts, beliefs, and actions. In the case of the Ben Franklin effect, the dissonance is between the subject's negative attitudes towards the other person and the knowledge that they did that person a favor. Because when the individual does that person a favor, he or she is likely to be convinced the person is likable. The change in attitude can prevent or resolve any dissonance between the individual's opinion about and actions towards the other person. Whether or not you believe in this effect, the act of approaching someone and asking for a favor puts you in contact with that person. In turn, that creates an opportunity for you and the other person to engage and possibly begin a relationship. It is an important life skill to be able to influence how others perceive you, but also to learn to approach others. That being said, some people also take advantage of this and start leeching off their friendships. So be careful and distinguish between those types of people, and the ones who genuinely want a good relationship with you. My insane sister-in-law is naming her child after my stillborn daughter, and it is making me uncomfortable. When I talked to her about it, she called me a beach. 3 months ago, I was scheduled to give birth to my daughter. But it ended up being a stillbirth, and I was heartbroken. My husband and I are still grieving the loss of our child, and I sometimes wish to forget that horrible day. My mother is Irish and I was going to name my baby after my great auntie from Ireland. But our happiness was devastated within moments. My family rallied around us and so did my husband's parents, but his sister was a different story. The first time she heard of this, she told me to get over it and just move on. I couldn't believe that she had no sympathy for me, but just ignored her because I didn't have the strength to fight. But I did avoid meeting her until recently, when she made a big announcement. She was 20 weeks pregnant and was having a daughter. I was so happy for her, but was once again reminded that I could never meet my own daughter. That being said, I was ready to be there for her, until we received the invitations for her baby shower. The name she had picked for her daughter was the exact same name as my stillborn. I literally burst into tears while looking at it. My sister-in-law has no connection with Ireland or the name, so I was really hurt and thought that she's rubbing the whole situation in my face. My husband called her and asked her why she picked that name. She just said that since we couldn't use it in time, she decided to go with it as she didn't want the name to go to waste. She also clarified that she isn't naming her baby after mine and that she doesn't want a connection between them. I was once again hurt by her lack of consideration, and decided to decline the invite to her baby shower. I thought she would just ignore me after doing all that, but I was wrong. She called me and began yelling at me, "Why can't you just be happy for me like you're supposed to? You're a sour beach who's going to end up all alone. Stop being jealous over nothing." I couldn't even say anything in response before she hung up, and I was left crying. I am now feeling really bad about not going to her baby shower, and feel like I should at least send her a gift. But her lack of care is still bothering me, so a part of me wants to get back at her by making it a terrible gift. And after consulting with my husband, I decided to do just that.
My feminist girlfriend said she would never take my last name because tradition is misogynistic, so I broke up with her. I have been dating my girlfriend for 1 year, and our relationship has been perfect except for one small thing. My girlfriend is what I would call a hardcore feminist. She is really active on social media and very vocal about her views on women empowerment. I actually thought it was one of her good qualities at first, and fell in love with how she would get so passionate about some topics. When the bald, stinking pig got famous on Instagram, she was one of the first ones to diss him out and did so brutally. She also got really passionate about the Barbie movie when it was released, and I thought it was cute how she dressed all pink to go watch it. But sometimes, she doesn't know where to draw the line, and last night was one such time. I was over at her place and we were just looking through our phones. One of our old friends had recently gotten married and posted on social media about how she was happy to take her husband's last name. Out of nowhere, my girlfriend said, "Oh my God, look at this misogynist tradition." I got dumbstruck and asked her what she meant. She began explaining how men had created this tradition to undermine women and that our friend was being manipulated into abandoning her family. I pointed out that she seemed happy to do it, and that no one had forced her into accepting that tradition. She just brushed off my comment, and kept going on about how all traditions were just made by men to degrade women. Once again, I tried pointing out that all tradition couldn't possibly have been created by just men. She paused and looked at me directly with a face that said, "Are you serious?" And then asked me, "Would you want me to take your last name?" I got a bit flustered because I had never really thought of marriage, so I just replied, "I mean, it would make me really happy if you do." After hearing that, it was like a switch was flipped in her head. She explained how I was emotionally manipulating her into accepting, and that I was a misogynist just like the others. I asked who others were, and she said that all men are secretly part of that group. I laughed and exclaimed that if all men were like that, then the word men would just be replaced with misogynists. She actually became angry at that point, and accused me of laughing at her feelings. I really didn't get why she was getting so worked up on this topic, as it really was irrelevant in my opinion. But I decided that it was just better to leave and go back to my house to give her some time to cool down. Before I reached home, I already had texts from her accusing me of being controlling and trying to undermine her. But I didn't think that I had said anything close to outrageous, and thought that her comments were unnecessary and demeaning. I really had to sit down and think for a minute. Did I really want to spend the rest of my life with someone who badmouths me and my character over something that is completely unrelated to me? I realized how toxic my girlfriend was actually being, and that I couldn't see a future where I would propose to her. Now, if this was something that she had picked up recently, I would have tried to get her into therapy. But she was like this from before we had even met. So I decided that it was just better to break it off because I had really lost feelings after she accused me like that. I texted her about my thoughts, and told her that we should go our separate ways. But she didn't like that at all, and went completely ballistic. She began saying that she was right, and that I was indeed a misogynist who didn't like when his girlfriend voiced her opinions. I knew that arguing with her would be pointless, so I just blocked her. But never did I expect that she would go on social media and do something even crazier.
My for the street sister is trying to steal my baby. She's even trying to steal my husband. For context, my husband is James 39, I'm 29 and my sister is Tilly 30. When my husband and I found out I wouldn't be able to carry a baby, my sister offered to be our surrogate so we could still have a biological child. She did this totally unprompted and on her own. She had divorced her husband over a year ago and was settling into single life. We offered to cover all medical expenses and expenses for anything that could improve her life/pregnancy quality, as it's not legal to pay for a surrogate in my country. She was more than happy to do that, and as time went on she said she didn't like pregnancy, it freaked her out and she couldn't wait to just give the baby to us and go on holiday. So 3 days ago she gave birth to our daughter. She's perfect and such a beautiful baby, and we were getting ready to take her home when Tilly denied it. She said I couldn't have my baby. I was really confused and asked what was wrong. What did she mean? She said she'd changed her mind and didn't want to give us our baby. I reminded her she wasn't biologically a parent to my daughter and reminded her that she hated pregnancy and wanted to go on holiday. She said no, wouldn't let me hold my baby, and made the nurse take me out. Since then I've been crying and really upset. Our parents are trying to get her to see sense, and none of it made any sense to me until James sat me down and showed me texts he had been getting from her for the past few weeks. They started out innocent, but then she said how hot and bothered the pregnancy was making her. He sent back a laughing emoji, but she carried on and prepositioned him, asking him if he was attracted to the woman carrying his baby, saying surely it made him feel some way. She sent some risky photos of her in her underwear and he told her to stop. She wasn't his wife, he wouldn't mention anything as none of us needed more stress, but this wasn't appropriate. Since then I've been looking over the contract we had drawn up, and there is a clause that allows me to gain custody by showing Tilly's written agreement and understanding of our contract to a judge. I've texted Tilly telling her she has a day to give me my baby or I will take her to court to enforce the contract and get custody of my child. Our cousins have texted me saying I'm a jerk for pressuring a woman to give her baby up. But it's my baby, not hers.
Entitled stepbrother wants to use my inheritance money to buy himself a car? Have fun sleeping on the streets. My dad remarried when I was 16, but I never got along with my stepbrother even though we are the same age. Ever since he moved in with me and my dad, he has acted like he owned the place. He leaves his clothes all over the house and refuses to pick them up even when I ask him to. I like to cook my own food and often save my leftovers for later. But he just eats them without asking first, and then denies doing it by saying he doesn't even like my food. He also stinks up the place since he rarely showers, and when I confront him, he gets mad and says something along the lines of, "It's my house and I can do whatever I want. If you have a problem with it, then you can leave." I tried to get my dad to do something about this, but my stepmother would always intervene and say he's just a child, and that I can be more mature about calling him out. Thanks to that reason, I normally tend to avoid everyone and just stay in my room. But I couldn't always do that at family functions. This one time, he was bragging about how he was going to impress this girl in his class by taking her on a road trip. I ended up laughing and spilling my drink because it was so hilarious, and told him, no girl wants to be with someone who doesn't even take a shower. Well, apparently, it was a known fact that he stinks, and everyone started snickering. He saw the look on their faces, and called me a liar and that I was just jealous of him. Since that day, he has hated me with a passion. Instead of eating my leftovers, he would just throw them out without any explanation. He mixed his colored clothes with my laundry and ruined all my white clothes. I was so tired of him and my dad not doing anything about it, that I applied to a faraway college and moved out of the house. That proved to be a good decision because I no longer had to walk on eggshells and watch my surroundings. I was going to make sure to enjoy my college life. But in my junior year, I got the worst news of my life. My dad had a terrible accident on the highway, and passed away on impact. I couldn't even believe that he was gone, and wept like a baby at the funeral. I requested some time off from college because I wasn't able to function properly. Every day I would just think back to all our good memories and wish I had stayed at home to spend more time with him. Tolerating my stepbrother was nothing if it meant I could make more memories with my dad. A few weeks later, a lawyer contacted me saying he wanted to talk about my dad's inheritance. It turns out that my dad had left the house as well as all the money he had to my name. And since I was already 21, I could lay a claim to it immediately. I hadn't even processed that information yet when out of nowhere, I received a call from my stepbrother. I thought he was going to offer his condolences and ask me to come back home, but no. Apparently, he had been promised a new car by my dad and was hoping to fulfill that wish once he was given his inheritance. But he was furious when he found out my dad had left him with nothing. So now he was calling me to ask for his rightful share, and demanded that I buy him a brand new car with the money I had just received. Not even a month had gone by since my dad's passing, so I was shocked to see that he had moved on already and was only talking about his money. It was clear to me that he held no love for my dad, so I wasn't going to entertain his ridiculous demand. The money my dad had left me was supposed to be for my future, and not to spend on luxury items. I told him that whatever promise he had with my dad was gone, and I wasn't going to buy him a car. He began yelling at me, calling me a selfish bitch when my stepmother snatched the phone and said that he didn't mean what he said. She knew that insulting me would only make me mad, and told me, "Your dad really did promise to buy your brother a car. I think it's only fair that you honor his legacy by doing good on his promise." I thought about it for a second, and asked them where they were. They said they were in their house, and I remembered that I now owned that property. So I told them, "You are no longer my family, and don't bother asking me for any handouts. By the way, that house belongs to me, so get out before I call the police on you for trespassing."
My parents neglected me and told me I was a burden my entire life. Years later they went bankrupt and are asking me for money. For as long as I can remember, my parents have treated me like I intruded upon their life. They had me when they were 19, and still wanted to enjoy their life. So they would leave me off at home and go to parties or even overseas trips. You see, the doctors told my mom that it would be highly unlikely for her to have another kid after giving birth to me. So they sometimes acted like I didn't exist, and just pawned me off to others. The babysitter they hired for me hated me, and I literally had to beg her for my food. She would make me do all the chores so she could get paid extra, and get physical if I refused. Whenever I went to my parents to tell them how she treated me, they would tell me to stop bothering them and that they were too busy to talk about kid stuff. This one time, all my friends were really excited because our school was taking us on a trip. But we needed permission from our parents, so I went to ask them to sign the papers. They were dressing up to go to a dinner date, and kept ignoring me when all I wanted was for them to sign a damn paper. The kid me was so sad that they didn't care about me that I cried myself to sleep that night. But I wish it had ended there. When I was 8, my mom became pregnant and the doctors called it a miracle. And to my surprise, my parents spoiled their second son like they had never spoiled me. They bought new clothes for him every month, went to all his school events and always canceled their plans if he was sick. The thing is, they still treated me like I wasn't even their son. They still never celebrated my birthday and instead used that time to once again go on couples only dates. But when it was my brother's turn, they would throw a huge party in the most expensive restaurant in town. I actually got fed up one day and just decided to ask them why they treated us so differently, and did they not love me? Their response still haunts me till this day. You were a burden, but he is a miracle that we will be forever thankful for. I realized then that I would never get anything from them, and began working for my own stuff. I got a job in high school and saved up enough money to move out at 18. They didn't even react when I told them I wasn't going to live in their house anymore, and my brother was just happy to have all their love to himself. I still loved them in my head, and wanted them to at least say goodbye, but they didn't even do that. I had to wait 2 years to enter college because I didn't get a 100% scholarship, and had to save up money to pay my own tuition. My mother would sometimes call to ask me how I was doing, but would always end up just telling me about her problems instead of helping me. When I did eventually enter college, I decided to completely cut them off. It did wonders for my mental health and I met my wonderful wife in one of my classes. She was like the light in the dark for me, and I told her about how my parents had treated me. So she helped me get over my trauma, and in doing so, I fell in love with her. The stupid me ended up asking her to marry me after just 5 months of dating, but surprisingly, she didn't say no. She said she would gladly accept any ring I bought for her, even if it was an engagement ring. I was really happy but also got a wake-up call, and didn't rush into our marriage. Instead, I worked on building my own business from the ground up that ended up being really successful. My degree was centered around civil engineering, and my company basically took contracts from whoever wanted work done on their house. It generated so much revenue that I was able to buy a house that me and my girlfriend could both live in. She stayed with me through all that struggle, and any doubt in my mind had been erased. So I took her on a vacation to Paris, and this time, I proposed properly with a ring in my hand. It's been 2 years since then and I am enjoying my married life to the fullest. But the only thing that could destroy my happiness came back into my life. Last week, out of nowhere, I received a call from my father. This man had not talked to me in years and didn't even know I was married. That being said, I wasn't really angry at my parents anymore since my wife had enabled me to move on, so I decided to talk to him. I took the call near my wife and put it on speaker. First he asked how I was and how life was treating me, so I told him about my business. There was a sudden shift in his tone from sad to a happy one. He wasted some time by telling me about how my mom was still attractive, and then finally got to the point. I don't know what I expected, but I should have known that he still didn't love me or even wanted to love me. It turns out, he had recently been fired from his job and had no savings whatsoever. My parents had literally declared bankruptcy to get out of some payments, but the bank was still demanding that they pay their mortgage. Bottom line, they wanted me to send them some money. I couldn't believe their audacity for a second, and had to do a double take. I asked about my brother, because he should have been old enough to earn by now. Well, all their love for him had gone down the drain, because he had dropped out of college and was just living off the allowance they gave him. That revelation was so ridiculous that I actually burst into laughter, and told my dad, "I'm sure you see the irony too. The son that you loved and treated like a king can't help you when you're in trouble. But the son that you neglected and called a burden is now successful, and you're begging him for money. Tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you help your parents?" My mom snatched the phone from him and started calling me ungrateful. She said that they had done their best to raise me, and took care of me while still in college even though they could have easily abandoned me for adoption. In her opinion, I had an obligation to help them and pay them back for everything they did for me. At this point, my wife also started laughing, so my mom went completely ballistic, and began yelling at us for being a bunch of entitled kids. So I told her that the only thing she is going to get from me is a signed paper stating that I am no longer their child, and hung up. My fiancée cheated on me right before our wedding. When she realized I had bought her dream house as a wedding gift, she came back and tried to apologize. I met my fiancée in college and instantly hit it off. She was recovering from a toxic ex she had dated in high school, and I wanted to help her move on. I took her on casual dates that would help her mental health, like a morning jog along with coffee, or even a weekend getaway to the mountains. She would often tell me about how she wasn't ready for a relationship, but I kept supporting her because I was in love with her. And after a whole year, she finally agreed to date me, and it was the best day of my life. I thought that we would be perfect together, and we were. I once took her to my parents' farmhouse to relax, and she loved it there. She told me how much she appreciated the fact that I never gave up on her. Now, while I did love her, I never liked her friends. They would make fun of my appearance and call me a backup plan, saying that I wasn't good enough for her. But I didn't let their comments affect me and did my best for my girlfriend. After we graduated, I proposed to her in front of everyone with a ring that I thought suited her the best, and she said yes. That now became the happiest day of my life, because our lives would be intertwined from now on. I was so happy to call her my fiancée, and eager to one day call her my wife. But little did I know, all my dreams would eventually be shattered. After the proposal, I immediately got to planning our wedding with the help of my in-laws. They were really fond of me because I used to help them with manual labor around the house. I picked the flowers and the food that my fiancée preferred, because I wanted it to be her special day. Out of nowhere, she told me that she wanted to have a bachelorette party. Although I wasn't having my own bachelor's party because I didn't see the point, I had no reason to say no to her. So I supported her and her friends. Decided to take her to Las Vegas. It was a bit sad to see her go when our wedding was so close, but it also gave me time to prepare my surprise. You see, she had always talked about how it was her dream to live in a lake house deep in the woods with a huge backyard that included a pool. And I had found a place exactly like that. So after dropping her at the airport, I immediately went over to sign the papers and bought her dream house. It was my wedding gift to her, and I didn't mind spending my savings on it at all. However, there was a surprising lack of contact from her side while she was on this trip. I would text and call her just once a day to ask how she was doing, but she wouldn't even respond to that. And then, I saw on social media that her friends had invited her high school ex to this bachelorette party. My heart began pounding as I desperately called my fiancée to ask what was going on. I knew that her ex was really toxic and had ruined her mental health, so I was worried about her safety. But when I called her, she confessed that she didn't actually want to marry me. She said that after meeting with her ex, she realized she was still in love with him and had already slept with him, so I should just move on. I was so caught off guard that I actually thought it was a joke at first. Our wedding was literally weeks away, and there is no way that she would just cheat on me and leave me like this. But she did. She posted a photo of her and her ex kissing on Instagram, and all my dreams were shattered. I cried and cried, but eventually realized that there was no going back. I am proud of myself for not just breaking apart and keeping business afloat while going through that tough time. A few days later, she came back and sent over the ring I had bought her in a small package. I was sad that she didn't even have the decency to hand it over in person, but it is what it is. I canceled all the wedding planners and was luckily able to get most of the deposits back. The venue was actually going to be the surprise lake house, but now I just had a spare house that I didn't know what to do with. So I took all my friends and decided to go fishing, as well as spending a week in that wedding gift. We obviously took a lot of pictures, and I didn't think any of it when posting them on social media. But within hours, I had a dozen missed calls from my now ex-fiancée. Apparently, she was furious that I didn't tell her I had bought her dream house. I calmly explained that it was supposed to be a wedding gift, but since the wedding was off, I was just planning on selling it. She was quiet for a few seconds, and then just burst into tears. She began saying that her friends had manipulated her into cheating on me, and that the part about her still loving her ex was a lie. She said she still loved me and apologized for her actions, asking me to forgive her and take her back. I was even more surprised this time, because she was obviously trying to trick me. She wasn't even sorry about the cheating, and only regretted her actions because she missed out on her dream house. I ended up laughing and pissing her off, so she screamed, "What's so funny?" By that time, I was done listening to her and hung up after saying, "Man, this lake house is so nice that I might live in it myself. Too bad my cheating ex-fiancé isn't gonna be here. My golden child brother stole my new car and my parents told me to forgive him. But I wasn't going to let that slide, and now he's in jail. Ever since my brother was born, my parents treated him like he was made of glass. My mom was actually told that she could never conceive after she had me. So when she got pregnant again, everyone called it a miracle child. And they made sure to spoil him after he was born. I was told to not go near him because I could hurt him. They went on a vacation to Bali with my brother but left me with my grandparents, even though I begged them to take me along. On my 10th birthday, all I wanted was to go to the playground for a while and enjoy myself. But they decided that it was more important to go and buy new clothes for their other child. As my brother grew up, he realized that he could ask for literally anything and my parents would never say no. He would ask to play with my toys, and suddenly they would become his forever. Because I always spoke up about how unfair my parents were treating us, he took offense to that. He would break things around the house like a flower pot or a beer glass, and then blame it on me. And of course my parents had to take his side. In fact, they even asked him how he wanted me to be punished, to which he would say, grounded for a whole week. Since he did that so often, my parents considered me a problem child and refused to celebrate my birthdays. When I was 13, I asked them why they treated us so differently, and their reply was, "Your brother was a gift from God. And looking at how much trouble you have been causing recently, we are glad we have another child to rely on for the future." I was so distraught over my parents not loving me that I cried myself to sleep that night. I was even bullied at school because I didn't have any stuff while my brother had all the new gadgets. But I didn't fall into depression, and instead decided to prove to them that I'm not a useless son. I graduated from high school as a valedictorian and thought that they would praise me. But my brother didn't like that the spotlight was on me, and decided to throw a tantrum about not getting enough attention. So instead of going to my graduation party, my parents took him to his favorite restaurant and treated him to a giant meal. That day onwards, I decided to just keep to myself. I was still living under their roof, but I hardly talked to anyone and only went down for lunch and dinner. It wasn't easy to do that as they were always worried about my brother and what he was doing anyway. I got a full scholarship to the college of my choice, and began focusing on my studies. I impressed one of my freshman professors, and got hired as his assistant the following year. When my brother turned 18, our parents bought him a brand new car even though he hadn't even applied for any colleges. And he made sure to flaunt it in my face by saying, "Why don't you go out with friends on car trips like I do?" Oops, I forgot that you don't have a car in the first place. That lit another fire inside me, and I began working on buying my own car. But I didn't just want to settle for a cheap model, and wanted to outdo him. After all, buying something more expensive than his car with my own money would be the perfect revenge in my opinion. So I got a job and started saving up money. I had to live with my parents so I could save up on rent, but I tolerated their abuse for the sake of my goal. One of my friends told me that his dad owned a car dealership, and could help me out. So I went over with all the money I had at the moment in the hopes of securing a car. To my surprise, my friend had already told his dad about my situation, and he agreed to lend me a second-hand Dodge Challenger if I paid him a certain amount every month. I asked him why he was doing this for a stranger, but he just laughed and said that if his son praised me, then I must be a good person. I am successful enough to not worry about my finances, and the thing that matters to me the most is my son's happiness. That is what he told me, and I was absolutely elated because I love the car. I immediately drove it around for a bit, but had to go home because I was getting sleepy. I had already decided to begin looking for an apartment at that point. But never would I have guessed that my brother would do something terrible. He saw my car parked in the driveway and threw a tantrum to our parents about how it was unfair that my car was better than his. But since I had bought it with my own money, there was nothing they could do for him. Thinking that I had finally gotten some payback, I went to sleep and put my car keys on my desk. But when I woke up the next day, I noticed that the keys were gone. I rushed outside and was shocked to see that the car was also missing, and so was my brother. I asked my parents about what was going on, and they said they had no idea. I waited for a few minutes and called some of my friends, but no one knew where the car was. I was getting really anxious about the whole situation, and that's when my brother pulled up into our driveway. Only that he was in my car, and not his. Both the front and back bumper on my car were missing, and the driver's window was slightly cracked. I ran out shouting, "What did you do to my car?" But he just shrugged his shoulders and laughed. Well, I decided to take it for a spin because this baby deserves a good driver. But turns out that it's actually a piece of trash and just fell apart on its own. Looks like you got scammed on this one. My eyes actually began to fill up with tears as I saw how he had wrecked my car and was clearly lying about it. I screamed at him, "You stole my car and crashed it just because you were jealous." But at this point, my parents decided to step in and once again, take his side. My mother hugged him and asked if he was alright, while my dad said, "You can't accuse someone like that. He wouldn't lie about crashing your car, and you need to believe your family's words." When I pointed out that he had literally stolen my car, they said that he only borrowed it and that I should just let it go. They didn't even wait for my response and just began walking back inside. But little did they know, I had a trick up my sleeve. You see, I already knew that the golden child was going to try something like this, and prepared for it by installing a camera inside my car. I immediately called the cops and explained the situation, and showed them the clip as proof. They knocked on my door and to the absolute horror of my parents, arrested my brother for stealing my car.